Tell me a little bit about you get the Free Thought Project. Got to make sure to get the in there because it's important if you're going to the freethoughtproject.com website. Police to Police. You've been at this for a long time. Tell me a little bit how you get here. Is it an incident or is it a lifelong journey?
Uh, I would like to think it's a lifelong journey, but who knows, right? No, realistically, I just happened to buy an iPad back in 2011 and started getting tuned in to a little more social media, such as like YouTube. And that was right around the time Occupy Wall Street was happening. So, growing up in the Bay Area, California, I was always somewhat the counterculture, but I didn't really know my stance ideologically or philosophically. So around the Occupy Wall Street movement was kind of when I realized that I had a lot to learn. And I just started absorbing as much social media, YouTube videos, information as I could. And that somehow, I don't know how, because Occupy Wall Street movement seems like it was a little more based on the left. Somehow I found Ron Paul, and that kind of opened the door to a whole world of information that seemed to make sense to me. So from there, I think it was about a 6-month journey until I became an anarchist, voluntarist. And yeah, we created, well, I created Police to Police. I'm the founder of Police to Police. That was 2012. And in 2013, a year later, I co-founded the Free Thought Project with Matt Agorist.
It's funny that you pointed out this sort of leftist nature, the leftist feel of Occupy, because as soon as you said that, my first thought was, okay, you must have already been principled coming in because I can see. Oh, I was there. I was there on Occupy too, and those first couple weeks, it was a big deal, and we had people marching actually on the banks and actually protesting the right things. And then within a couple of weeks, that was gone. That ended, and it took a whole different direction. So I could see how you would find that Ron Paul influence out there because we all carried it out there when we were out there. So that's really great. Yeah, and so you've been at this for 7, 8 years doing this, and along the way somewhere somebody kind of cut the strings on you after building this huge audience. This is something that a lot of people have experienced, this sort of right-wing culling from a couple of years ago.
Sure. I'd go one step further and say it doesn't only apply to the right, although
No,
that's
no,
been characterized by the right as that being the case. But I think I would say it's anybody anti-establishment at this point. And primarily, yeah, the main culprits are Facebook, Twitter, Google, as you'd imagine, right? The big tech overlords. So yeah, as you alluded to, Michael, 2018, October 2018, we had our pages and accounts removed by both Facebook and Twitter on the same day, resulting in a net loss of nearly 6 million fans. So it was pretty devastating, as you can imagine. I had ironically just bought a house, first time homeowner, and I was 2 weeks in to owning the house when that happened. So as you can imagine, not only chaos for our organization, but for me personally, like how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to continue to make money? Because maybe your audience doesn't know, so a lot of people don't know, surprisingly, but the way the internet works is websites, smaller publishers like ourselves, we make money off of ad revenue. So the more people that we send to our site, the more money we make in ad revenue. Unfortunately, this is one of the only sustainable business models that exists right now. There are others like donations, a few others that we could get into if we wanted to talk about that. But unfortunately, ads are the main way that a lot of smaller publishers make it in this world. So we had to let go of 7 employees, 4 writers, 3 social media people, and those people all lost their jobs. You know, they had no more income. And basically, we waited about a week, thought things over, did a bunch of interviews, but decided that it was probably in our best interest and worth our investment of time and energy to reboot the pages and try to reestablish ourselves and our organization. So that didn't last too long. Within the next year of 2019, Facebook took down our Free Thought Project page 3 more times. So we're now on the Free Thought Project 4.0. And same with the Police page. They also took that down 2 more times. So right now we're at Police 3.0. And they actually just threatened us about a week ago saying that they're going to take down these new pages as well.
Well, everything changed again, and it seems to coincide with these algorithm changes and technology changes that they make with it. I noticed, um, I don't know, probably middle of last month is when I first noticed, I think, that my reach all of a sudden disappeared.
Yep.
It was probably 70% of it. And for me, that I mean, I noticed right away, so I can't imagine, sort of sitting there one day looking at 6 million people, and then the next day being, where's my page? I can't even get into my page.
Yeah, it was absolutely devastating, man. I'm still bitter about it to this day,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
and I've tried to let it go, and I have to a certain extent, but the amount of how much they continue to censor us is unfathomable. We didn't realize that it was just going to continue to keep escalating. We thought maybe this was like a one-time thing because realistically, before that, which is that day in October, which has been come to be known as the Purge, there was only a couple people who had really been taken down from social media. There was Milo, there was Alex Jones, there was maybe a couple other people other than that. And we knew it was coming. We actually wrote articles about it. We tried to warn our audience, but that was about the best we could do. Unfortunately, Facebook and Twitter both had other ideas for what they wanted to do with our organization and our accounts. And if I may just add one caveat too, it was both Facebook and Twitter on the same day.
Oh, is that right? I didn't realize that.
The idea that this wasn't coordinated seems like, and hey, I'm not like going to point at a conspiracy theory, but you can come to your own conclusions there, right?
Yeah. No, I didn't. I had no idea. I didn't realize that was actually done on the same day. So no,
within hours.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, that was obviously deliberate. Yeah, I may have believed that argument somewhat. If it hadn't been so, it was obvious. It happened so quickly, and it happened to certain people. It happened to certain voices, and it happened pretty heavily on the sort of right-leaning, anti-authoritarian side versus the left-leaning anti-authoritarian side, which is actually just socialist.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I certainly agree with that. Yeah, I mean, there were some left outlets too, but I'd say that predominantly it was the right, the anti-establishment right for sure. And this was before, the Boog Boys and Proud Boys and all that, so they didn't classify it as such, and they actually gave us a pretty broad explanation. They said that we were engaging in inauthentic behavior, that we were using fake accounts, and that we were spamming our audience. So, really? And this is the explanation that they gave to around 850 pages and accounts that all got taken down that day. So who knows how much of it really applied to us, what applied to other groups or outlets and pages. It's hard to distinguish exactly what it was that we did wrong. Of course, we never heard back on any appeal. We never heard back on any of the appeals for any of the pages that we've gotten taken down. They basically, memory hold our accounts and close the book and didn't want to be bothered anymore about our pages and organization. So pretty ominous.
No warning, completely gone, and no process for trying to make any appeal, really. I mean, what'd you do? You get to click a couple of buttons that said, "We disagree," and maybe type in a sentence, and then it said, "You're banned anyway." That's it.
Yeah, well, actually, didn't even get that response. That
no,
we're
not
anyway,
even that.
Yeah, so didn't even get the luxury of that. So, I mean, yeah, these people are frauds. If you look at their Facebook mission statement, it's to connect and empower people, basically, and to be able to create community. That's not word for word, obviously, but that's kind of the gist of it. And that's what we were doing. We're Americans. We're all Americans who work for us. In fact, a couple of them are even military veterans. And we were simply just trying to provide information to other Americans so they can make the best decisions with their own lives, voting choices, etc. And apparently that was enough of a threat to Facebook and Twitter to remove us and take us down. So, there was an upside. We did a bunch of interviews. We were actually on InfoWars. We did the Tom Woods show. We interviewed with Reason. I even had a piece written up in Rolling Stone, believe it or not. So there was a bit of an upside, and as these things happen, you always kind of have to look for the positive. A lot of doors did open after that. We started networking with a lot of new social media platforms who reached out to us. So when bad things happen, you kind of have to try to make the best of it and continue on. So that's what we've done, but it doesn't make it any less bitter.
Yeah, no, because part of the problem is that I imagine with yourself is that you absolutely support their right to do it, but you don't understand their reasoning behind doing it, and you don't understand why they don't allow you to make a case, an actual case, not just make some statement that you don't agree, but to actually make a case before. So if they have this court, this jury of people that they have deciding on this stuff, bring me in front of it and let me make my case for my argument and what I'm saying.
Sure. Well, yeah, there's two things I would touch on about that is, first of all, Facebook engaged in the biggest bait and switch possibly a corporation has ever engaged in the sense that from about 2010 to about 2015, when their page feature on Facebook was thriving, they gave a lot of reach to publishers and small page owners. So a lot of people jumped on board, and not just people from the liberty movement, right? I mean, we're talking about people across multitude of different types of backgrounds, interested in multitude of different types of hobbies, interests. I mean, any type of page you could look for, it exists, whether it be water skiing or polo. I mean, anything, literally anything, it exists, right? So all these people decided to create a Facebook account, create a Facebook page, try to engage with these types of, pages and groups. And so that gave Facebook a huge advantage because all of a sudden their platform's growing leaps and bounds. So after people like us have invested, created these pages, creating fresh content on a daily basis, Facebook all of a sudden pulls the rug from underneath us and says, well, look, we have so many users now that we're going to have to kind of scale back some of your reach. They only said that, in so many words. Of course, they're not going to come out and just straight up say that. But around 2015, 2016, we started to see that even though we had, 2.5 million fans, we're getting the same reach that we had when we had 200,000 fans. So tell me, what's the point of building these audiences? What's the point of creating fresh content on a daily basis? Obviously, the philosophical side of it is there. Like, we're trying to share information. That's our main goal as an organization. But we have financial incentive to invest into these types of social media platforms by creating audiences. And time is money, right? So they basically pulled a bait and switch. They baited us in. Once their platform got successful and big, they pulled the rug out. And that was part of the frustration as well. Even before we were censored and removed from the platform, that was something that was like a growing frustration for a lot of page owners. And for the second thing that I was going to address about what you said is, I would agree with their decision to remove us from their platform because, after all, it is their platform, right? And I probably, just like you, do believe in private property. I do believe that companies and corporations should be able to do what they want with their own company, and nobody should have a say in that. But the problem is, Facebook is heavily embedded with the state. Facebook has a revolving door with government. If you look at a lot of their top positions, it's people who used to work for government moving over. Not to mention that Facebook has also hired different think tanks to work with them, like the Atlantic Council. So the Atlantic Council is made up of a bunch of different pharmaceutical companies. They even have parts of government inside the Atlantic Council. There's military involved. There's a lot of interests in the Atlantic Council that wouldn't want our information to be proliferating across the platform. So when you look at it from that stance, you realize that, hey, like Facebook is private, but it also has a lot of government influence. Then it starts to make you kind of wonder, okay, well, is it really private? Are they really administering these types of standards, or whatever they want to call them, because it's in their interest, or are they being influenced by the government to do these
Well,
types of things?
we all know that they absolutely are being influenced by the government. There's no question about it. Businesses do what government tells them to do, otherwise they don't get to be businesses, or they certainly don't get to be big businesses.
Right.
And I think, I mean, we're talking about not that long ago, sort of 5 years ago. So they were well into this. They already knew that the information that was coming through, that they could monetize it. They already knew that they could also use it to create artificial intelligence and understanding of us as people and what we're going to do, and sort of do everything that they've talked about doing all this time, is sort of creating a hive mind. Many years in the fiction and
Yep.
and throughout history, they've talked about doing this, and they've really created one. And they did it in such a way as that they convince people again. There's kind of, here's the little carrot over here. This is
Yep.
what we're going to do, but underneath it, they're really, this is what they're really doing. They're really
Right.
building this intelligence and all this data and collecting it and making a hell of a lot of money on it, if nothing else. Like,
Right.
even if they're not using it necessarily for negative reasons, they still definitely are making a lot of money out of it, and they're not sharing it.
Sure. Right. Right.
It's our data. Maybe they should share. So it's obvious that they did it on purpose. And
Uh,
so then you have to think of why. What's
sure.
the reason? Well, you go and you look at what they shut down. They shut down so-called conspiracy, and they do it because I don't know. I guess maybe they get away with it because it's not the most popular thing. It's hugely popular, but it's not the most popular. And so they can push us around, kind of the people that talk about those things. I I just wonder where it goes from here, because the problem, you've asked this question yourself to your audience, right? You asked the question of why they're still here in these places. Why are you still on Facebook? Why are you still using Twitter? And of course the basic answer is because that's where everybody is at. But have you received any better answer than that?
If I had to guess, I think it is the years of investment that people have, put into Facebook. They have memories, they have pictures from when they were 15, or whatever. I mean, yeah, they have pictures of their kids, they have all their high school friends. I mean, it is home base for a lot of people in the social media world, and I get that. And I would also add to that, Facebook really is the tip of the spear when it comes to the social media experience, in the sense that they're constantly innovating, they're constantly adding new features, new products to their lineup. So whether it be Facebook Marketplace, Facebook Live, Facebook Groups, there's something that seems to be valuable for almost everybody. And what I do hear a lot is that, well, I only use Facebook for this. I only use Facebook for that. And it seems like a lot of people have realized that it is toxic in many ways. It is not in their best interest, but there's still just that one thing. Like I read this morning, oh, it's just your group and my hiking group. That's why I stay on Facebook, and that's fine. I get it, but it's only going to get worse. You ask, like, where does it go from here? It's only going to get worse. And I could guarantee that because I've seen it escalating, and it's ramping up now to the point where it's just going to be blatant. It's not going to be even so much that they're trying to obfuscate or hide what they're doing. It's just going to be in our face. And that's slowly rolling out right now with each news cycle you see. I mean, yesterday there was that whole fiasco with the Hunter Biden, that whole thing. And both Facebook and Twitter both took it down, and of course the right's having a field day saying that this is like election interference, and hey, like, I feel like Facebook's been engaging in election interference in their own behalf, not even necessarily trying to appease the politicians who were claiming that back in 2016 after Trump won, but they've also been engaging in taking down a lot of people who are telling you not to vote and not to even participate within the whole clown show, So they're doing their own, not in the way that, of course, the left is claiming they are, but they're certainly doing their own election rigging as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, it's just going to get worse. That's why it is so important that we move off of Facebook. It's just going to be a total shit show.
Well, here's something to look at, and maybe people haven't considered this, especially if they haven't been around on the internet as long as the internet has been around, and some of us have. Um, this is a regression. Facebook is a regression of the progress that has been made on the internet and the growth and the reach of the things that you could do. This is how the internet started. It started out on, well, not really, but for the majority of people, what most people think of as the internet. AOL, CompuServe, I don't know, a couple of other ones that were in there, maybe local and regional ones, things like that were a little bit bigger. AT&T, everybody jumped on, had their little thing for a while, and they had their own little communities,
right.
And you just logged into that community, and that's what's happening now. And it's we're going back to that where everybody ran away from AOL. They said, "Oh, we're going to get outside of this cage and expand the information that we're getting," and then and everybody did. And there was an interesting little renaissance of information that experienced in there. And now it's come back full circle, and it's going back in the other direction. And we have a problem. Again, this comes down to you kind of alluded to this, and people sort of. Not, using the tool at times only for certain things instead of accepting that it's their use of the tool that they're failing at for the most part. If they're going to use it, they say, "Oh, I don't want to be on there because it's toxic, it's negative. All these people are saying this, that, and the other thing, and I don't like it." Well, that's really actually pretty easy to avoid. It's not that hard to do. You can create the echo chamber, if you will. It's really hard to do. I've tried. It doesn't actually work. You can choose a whole lot of people out there that look like they would be your friend, somebody that would have something in common with you. And I did this again just the other day. It's because I keep my social media, my Facebook, real clean, so I see what I want to see. I block things out. I remove people. I clean out dead accounts, people that are no longer there. And this same day I did this, I deleted sort of 100 dead accounts and questionable accounts. And by the end of the day, there were 200. I had 200 more than I had after I had culled 100 people off of the list. So I had accepted a whole bunch of these friends, and I had this in mind. Okay, I'm creating an echo chamber, purposely doing that, selecting these people. All right, is this really going to work? No, within 24, 48 hours of doing that, I had unfollowed 90% of the people that I had just friended because I was like, "Oh my God, how did I even get myself into this? How do they think that way?" But the problem, my point is that people have a problem with communication and talking to people. This is not going to help. This is a necessarily limiting space as it is. You only have just this much space and this much time anyway to catch somebody's attention. It's this short form. You got to make your point. You have to be heard, which is not good to positive growth communication. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah, we felt like we were using it for positive, and as we were all aware of, even back in 2012 when we were first starting these pages, like we had a broad idea that Facebook is up to some shady stuff. We'd heard about the NSA and the PRISM program and all these things. We're like, okay, like Facebook maybe isn't in our best interest, but maybe we could use it to try to share information and plant some seeds and get people to think about some of these philosophical ideas that maybe they've never thought about before. And so, I think, like you were saying, Facebook has regressed, and social media in general, because there was a brief period of time, I would say, between, like 2011 and 2015, where we had a lot of reach. And Facebook almost didn't realize how much power they were giving small publishers like ourselves. And, on a good week, we were up to like reaching 60 million, 70 million people in 1 week. On an average, it was probably between 20 and 30 a week. If we drop below 20 million, like we were like starting to panic, like, okay, we need to start producing better content, But then, yeah, around 2015, 2016, the election happened, Donald Trump won, and the establishment kind of realized, like, wow, like nobody's really paying attention to the mainstream legacy media anymore. Everybody kind of thinks it's a joke. Maybe we should start putting pressure on these social media companies who are allowing these smaller independent publishers to provide a third narrative, different information to people. And I think that's around the time we really started to feel the clamp coming down. Shortly after, there were fact checks, the whole fake news mantra came up.
Mm.
And just like you were saying, I totally agree. It is a communication problem. It's also a comprehension problem, because just because there's information out there that we disagree with, that doesn't mean that we should try to wipe it off the platform altogether, and that's the problem. There should be a place where we can have these conversations, and the more that we try to limit or reduce, or Facebook tries to limit or reduce that type of information, it is going to create smaller echo chambers. It is going to be less in the public eye. It's going to go towards smaller social media sites like Parler, like Gab. And then, yeah, that's going to become a whole new environment for that type of thought process, for that type of ideology. And who knows how radicalized it's going to make people. At least when it was in Facebook land, there was an opportunity for people to have a discussion about it.
Right, that's the free speech argument in general, right?
Sure.
Let an asshole be an asshole, so you
Right.
know that that's where the asshole is.
Right.
You stay away from that spot. You stay away from that space if you don't want to be around those people that think that way, that act that way. Yeah, this is a problem. This happens. Yeah, you create a factionalization of it's getting even worse. I mean, we're seeing it now on the streets in America, something that we did not see even just a couple of years ago, that you wouldn't even necessarily have thought could happen. Maybe some of us would have, but there are others of us that would never have thought they could see what they're seeing on the street right now. You have the Black Lives Movement people, you have that leftist movement, really, I don't know, I guess tested and tried after Occupy to know what would succeed and what wouldn't. And there's a certain vitriol that has appeared in it since then. We've gone through a black president. We've come back to what is perceived to be sort of white nationalist hater of anything on the left, anything of color. It's certainly they've thrown every single little dart they can at every single one of these, and so we're now at a point where the information that most of these people are seeing is controlled.
Sure.
Again, it was free for a while. There was this period of time, again, this Renaissance period where there was information flowing, and now it's been caught back, and people have been pulled back into it, and they're buying it. It's really unfortunate, because we have the greatest opportunity ever. It's the weirdest thing when people talk about not being able to be knowledgeable about a topic when you're on the internet.
Right.
What are you talking about? I'm right here in front of two huge screens and all of this information from every point in the world, from every point in history, and it's right at my fingertips. What are you telling me I can't know something? Or maybe you can't know it because you're trapped inside this little box.
Right.
Think they get comfortable there?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think most people don't want to challenge their own confirmation bias, and that is part of the problem as well. Although I didn't really see like a huge campaign by Facebook users saying, hey, like we need people to fact check, these different news agencies. Like we need some kind of guidance. We need some kind of arbiter of truth to tell us what's misinformation and what's not. I feel like that was more pushed by the establishment. And like we were saying earlier in this conversation, once the establishment starts to put their thumb down on you, you as a company or you as an individual will try to do whatever you can to get out of being underneath that thumb. And I think that's exactly what Facebook has done by trying to implement these fact check errors, by trying to even, they just announced yesterday that any anti-vaccination advertising is now banned. I mean, the list is immense. They continue to ban all types of things on the platform. And to me, it's just virtue signaling and an attempt to be like, look, like, see, hey, we're trying to clean up our platform. We're doing everything you want us to. Like, just don't, take over our business infrastructure. Just don't make this like a public entity. And we'll continue to play ball. We'll continue to do whatever we have to be able to continue making the billions that we're making, So I do agree that, that it is just making people more extreme. They're pushing people to the left and the right. There is that huge disconnect from anything in the middle. People no longer care about intellectual integrity. People no longer care about facts, logic, reason. It's about my team. It's about my tribe. And that's what's reinforced with these echo chambers.
That's all you see. Yeah, you see the banners, you see the flags, and it's funny because I was just taking my daughter to work this morning, and you drive down the street, and I have a big street right next to me, and every yard there's vote for this guy and vote for that guy, and they're waving their team around, and it's weird to me because it's not even satisfying like a football game. When
Sure.
you enjoy the win of your team at least a little bit. You have an excuse to get drunk, but I mean, and who knows, they might even go on and finish the season out and go on to the Super Bowl. But there's no winner with the election thing. There's no winner in choosing these fractionalized and factionalized little tribes that we get into, and it's so we're so much further down the road from understanding of where these things come from and what they actually meant to people, that as you start to fall into a vacuum like this, you have to ask yourself the question. You seem to think that it might be that they're just trying to survive. There are other people out there that believe that they're doing it on purpose, that the likes of what's his face, Zuckerberg, the guy that owns Facebook, that he's in bed with the New World Order, and he's in bed with this idea of changing things and disarming people and controlling the flow of information and making sure that only the established elite authority is able to have a voice to say to people, and that's either one of those is extremely scary in my book.
Sure.
Neither one of them is a winnable situation for anybody who's just getting sucked into the black hole of this information, and with no light at the end of it.
Sure. No, I agree. I actually have two Facebook insiders. Shh, don't tell anybody. But one of them has suggested that he's met Zuckerberg, he's worked with them, and that it's actually not him who's implementing all this censorship. Like, they actually say he's a pretty level-headed guy. It's Sheryl Sandberg, who is also like one of the top dogs at Facebook. She's the one who's kind of spearheading all this, and I don't doubt that. I mean, I don't obviously know. I can't confirm that either way, so take it as a grain of salt. But I would suggest that it's probably both those things, to be completely honest. I think they're trying to stay out of being under the government thumb. And there is some, revolving door, backdoor business going on between the state and Facebook. I mean, they're such a big entity. Like, of course, like that's going to be the case. There's going to be some influence there. So, yeah, I would suggest it's probably both those things. And maybe even a few other factors we're not even aware of,
Oh man, if the Catholic Church could get people to come to a website like Facebook gets them to, if the state could get people to come to a website like Facebook does, that's what everybody's clamoring. I have no doubt that all of those people just constantly, there's just a constant din, buzzing of people who are just saying, you have to do this and you have to do this and you're gonna have to do this and you've got to take control of this and you can't let people do this. I can just,
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
When you're so big and you have so much influence over things,
Right.
what do you think the best solution is for people? We're coming to the end of this thing. We're gonna have to wrap it up. What do you think the best solution is for people? Do they just keep liking and following? Do they need to speak out? How do they speak out? What do they start to do?
Sure. So that yeah, we focus very heavily on solutions in our podcast, the Free Thought Project podcast that we do. So I would say, obviously, it's going to be hard to cut off Facebook cold turkey, right? Like a lot of people aren't ready to do that. I would say just create an account on one or two alternate social media platforms. I'll make a few suggestions after I get done with this point, but by doing that, you're at least opening the door to start using some of these other social media platforms. You don't have to use them every day, but every once in a while, go on there, follow some people, go on your news feed, click some likes, share some posts, and eventually you'll start kind of getting into the habit and kind of hang of some of these other social media platforms, which are admittedly a little bit different from Facebook. Some of them do take some time to get used to. I think by doing that, you give yourself the opportunity to not deal with as much censorship. You're creating a whole nother audience and network away from Facebook, and we're not giving Facebook as much power. The problem is we're kind of the minority here, right? Like people who are the fringe publishers like ourselves, people who think, with these counterintuitive ideas, the anti-establishment ideas. So as much as I would say, let's all just shift over to one platform, even if we all did, it's still going to be a small majority of us. What really needs to happen is the masses need to leave Facebook. And that's already happened once. MySpace is dead because of Facebook. So as soon as the next thing big comes along and everybody jumps on that, Facebook's going to die out as well. Of course, that's contradicting what I said earlier in the conversation, because there are going to be some people who still stay on Facebook for the specific things that they use it for. But let's go over to minds.com. There's already a huge community there, already a huge liberty community there. They have groups, they have a bunch of pages, a bunch of users. Same with MeWe, MeWe.com. That's personally right now my favorite. We're on 13 different social media platforms. Right now, I see the most potential in MeWe.com. Go over there, check it out. It's almost a Facebook clone in the sense that it looks and functions a lot like Facebook. Get over there. I already have 4,100 followers of my own. Our pages already have thousands of followers. We have to start growing our networks and audiences outside of Facebook because, like I said earlier, it's just going to get worse and worse. People are just going to continue to post, I got censored for this, I got taken down for that. Guess what? That's your own fault for staying on Facebook, right? So if you're going to stay on there, keep in mind that you're going to be censored. That's a no-brainer at this point. That's going to happen. But let's go over to float.app. That's another one. Let's go over to Gab. Let's go over to Parler. Let's go over to these other smaller yet starting to have momentum social media platforms, and let's help them out. I think that's one of the biggest things we could do. Otherwise, just keep trying to support some of these smaller publishers, some of these smaller pages that are on Facebook, like, share, comment. That's how the algorithms put more of our posts in other people's feeds. And let's do what we can to support each other.
No, I think that's perfect, and I think that's probably a perfect way to end it. I really appreciate you taking the time and hanging out with me. I know you're a busy man, so it's really great to get to a chance to talk to you and great to meet you. And
Same.
I wish you the best in everything